Hi, my name is Beth Philemon, and you are watching the Choir Baton YouTube channel. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why I started using student leadership in small groups in my rehearsals. Okay, so I started using student leadership and small groups in my rehearsals out of desperation. But what it actually showed me was way more than I could have ever expected. And now I would never not do that. So when I got to one school, there was already a student leadership system set up in place. But what I found, that was primarily for music, and there were different section leaders. And I know from my experience of being a singer, sometimes there are section leaders that jive with the conductor, but in a sectional, it's a totally different story. And so what I did was, knowing that that is sometimes the case, I elected student directors that would handle the music and oversee sections. But then I also had all of the other leadership roles were non-musical. And I really sought to have every student engaging in some sort of musical leadership at some point during the year and kind of within every single day. There were student leaders that would take role, not an administrative thing. And then there was a couple student leaders that would oversee the music, but then they also were never directly in charge of always running the ensemble. They would sometimes be in charge of simply delegating, having different students take charge of running either a full group rehearsal or a small group rehearsal. And this was so important for me because of the long period of time that I was teaching in a day. And I like things to move super quick. I don't like a wasted second. But I found that my energy level as a person was not able to sustain for the whole day when I was on all the time. Simultaneously, I was undergoing vocal issues, and vocally, I just could not instruct students all 90-minute class periods that I had. So I structured this in several different ways. I first began modeling individual student leadership by having students come to the front of the class and model, just through echoing or some of the other activities I talk about in the teaching membership, having them model being a leader for the rest of the class. It gives them such a great opportunity to see how hard it is to stand in front of the class. And sometimes it was vocal modeling, sometimes it was bodily modeling, sometimes it was all different kinds of things. If there are students that are at first nervous about singing in front of others, then there's always workarounds within that. Then once they could model with one person to a class, I would also break them off into small groups. And then I would change those groups frequently. And I don't mean frequently like once every week or once every day, but I would have them get into the process of meeting up with a partner, practicing what I was telling them, and then they verge and they go to another one. And these are in like 30-second spurts. And in the very beginning, I would really not give them much time to practice the musical concepts that I was doing. Instead, they didn't know this, but I had them moving quickly from group to group because I wanted them to practice finding another person and starting working with them. And once they started going, then I would have them transfer again. So what I was really teaching within that is how they're moving, even though I never said it to them. And then eventually, once I found that they were moving from person to person quicker and not engaging in 15-minute conversations before they started working, then I would lengthen the amount of time that they were working in smaller groups together. Maybe instead of 30 seconds to a minute, then from a minute to a little bit longer. And so everyone was getting a chance to contribute within these small groups, whether it's echoing or chaining like that with each other. Then I would break the smaller groups up into larger groups, and we would frequently do sectionals. And sometimes those sectionals really bombed, and kids would come back even more frustrated with each other than when they left. Or sometimes they would come back in and it would be amazing, and they would have gotten things that I would have never expected. These small groups aren't perfect, but what I found was that it gave me time to recenter, to work on my voice, and then to also facilitate around the different groups and hear and watch and listen and observe and see what was happening. They are capable of doing this on their own, and some of them love it. Yes, some of them hate it. And if you ever do this with adults, particularly right now, adults absolutely hate it because they are used to being told what to do, when to do it, versus when today's students like to figure it out a little bit more on their own. And this is a great opportunity for that. But what I've found is that it strengthened their ownership of what they were doing. And it was also a great way for me to watch how they were practicing so that then I could instruct them on how to practice in these smaller groups from problems that I saw or awesome things that I saw. So that then when I asked them to go and practice outside of the classroom, they were prepared with how to practice either on their own or with others without me there. So often early on in my teaching, I expected kids to be able to go home and practice on their own, but I'd never taught them how to practice on their own. Even for me as a singer in college, I was expected to practice on my own, but had never truly been taught and didn't know what to do, and quite frankly, did really bad and failed. Using these small groups is a great way for you to build that sense of understanding into your students. And finally, this is the real world, folks. If your singers are going into any type of field, small group work is required, and it is awkward, and it is messy, and it is uncomfortable, and it can teach us so much. And if we are not doing more of this in the choral classroom, we are really losing out on opportunities to prepare ourselves and to prepare our students for how to learn from each other in unique and new and different ways that can have huge impacts. I'm Beth Philemon, and you're watching the Choir Baton YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to find out when I'm releasing new videos just for you to help us get more people singing.